Anastasia. Oh, but first I gotta say we're gonna be and to give you a little bit more, we're gonna be talking about this. So stay tuned. Make sure that you pay attention because this is important. We're gonna cover it with context, with mind, blah blah blah, and then over to you.
Great. Sounds
Okay.
exciting.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. We good to go? Everybody ready?
Yay!
Should we clap? You can't hear me on this one. Yes, we're recording on VLC, we're recording on the road, we're recording on the 810 mini. Cameras are recording, Lee. Do you want to clap? Phones are on silent.
Phones are on silent. I would rather you whisper, by the way.
Sorry, am I talking too loud?
Come on, guys. The baby.
The baby. Hey, the baby.
All right, I'm good here. Rolling when you're ready.
All right, good. All right, Anastasia, get ready. Oh my God, this is so exciting. Oh, heart opener. Okay, all right, here we go. All right, everybody, how's it going? Master Maz here with the Master Maz podcast. It's no longer Brain Education Middle East, right? All right, everybody, Master Maz here from the Master Maz podcast. Welcome, one and all. Today is an exceptionally beautiful recording session for our podcast. We have today with us Anastasia Potapova, all the way from Latvia. Anastasia is a master brain education trainer, and she's also my classmate for my brain education graduating class in the program. Today is going to be especially beautiful because we're going to be talking about so many different things from pre and postnatal, postpartum depression, sad stuff, but also talking about all the things we don't usually talk about when it comes to birth, before and after, not to say the contents only, but the mind behind which, how we prepare ourselves internally and how we relate to everyone around us, husband, wife, kids, the entire spectrum. So without further ado, Anastasia Potapova, all the way from Latvia. Woo!
Hi, thank you. So grateful to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having the time as well to meet with us. I know that you're a fresh mom, so it's like babies are like number one right now, right? So please tell me, I'm going to start right away. What is the hardest thing about motherhood right now, first coming into it?
Actually, this is literally also the hardest question you could probably ask.
So it's good start.
Yes, actually, when I was pregnant, many women were telling me, and many men were telling me, oh, this is so hard. This is the hardest thing you will ever do. It's so hard. And it was really bothering me when I was pregnant, because I was just going like, well, don't tell me this now, tell me this before I get pregnant or something, tell me this, or don't tell me this at all, or give me some solutions. How can how can we make it better? What is so hard? Everyone's just saying it's really hard, but what is hard, or what are the solutions, So this was really bothering me. And when the baby was born, the hardest thing that I really found, it's actually not the sleepless nights, because the sleepless nights, I can manage myself, I can manage this. This is actually fine. Also, I mean, for some people, it can be really, really bad. Right. But for me, I feel there is something in nature already in us, that makes us kind of go through these things. And also the interesting thing, many people report that this phase of life, this first 1.5 years, they sort of forget, it's sort of erased from the memory. It becomes very, very hazy. At least many mothers say that, because I feel there are so many hormones in the body that make you kind of forget these things. But the hardest thing actually is maintaining the relationships, maintaining relationships. And the thing is, kids...
Please be explicit when you say maintaining relationships. Are we talking about spouse, husband, friends, parents, all the above?
All of it. But mostly, of course, your spouse, the person that you are directly raising the child with. The thing is, children, they are a direct expansion of both of you. So you take your consciousness, your partner's consciousness, and then you have a child, and it is an expansion.
Right.
That's why we always want our kids to be better than us. Your parents wanted you to be better than they were or than they are. It's always we want them to be, because that's nature. They are
Right.
expanding. There is a certain evolution happening. Like we are different than our ancestors as well.
Right.
And so these children, they are an expansion, and it can go both. So expansion, what does it mean? Growth. It's always incredibly super uncomfortable. Super uncomfortable. So it's not something like, oh, the baby is born, it's so nice, so nice.
It's not all
It's
euphoria.
sometimes, yeah, it sometimes is like that. But bear in mind, this is your growth.
Mm.
So what do you have to do to grow? So
Right.
so you always, when you have an opportunity to grow, you can either degrade, you can either degrade, or you can grow, actually.
Right.
So when you're given an opportunity, you can really regress or you can progress. So
Right.
and that's why, this is really hard. are
Mm.
are you both ready for this expansion?
Yes.
Are you both actually ready? Because when the time comes, uh what so you can say, oh, sure, I'm ready, but when the time comes, are you actually ready to do the work?
Right.
So the hardest thing is, you can see the family patterns. You can see you so I see, we often discuss this with my husband. We see the family patterns in my family. We see the patterns in his family. They're actually awfully similar as well,
Mm.
which is
No
normal,
surprise
actually.
there, right? You chose them.
Yeah, when you choose partners, it's very normal. Yeah, so that you would choose someone, with a sort of similar or relatable traumas. We all have
Mm.
traumas, so no
So
surprise.
interesting you say that. Right. Go on.
Yeah, yeah. So it's the way that you adapt into life,
Mm.
into adulthood. So it's based on your some sort of traumas, and we all had them, even if we had very beautiful, amazing parents,
Right.
because these are the lessons, these are the things that we need to learn, that we need to undo, unravel, to grow, to progress, to raise our
Wow.
consciousness. And so children, when they come in, it's like, you had like this amount of work to do, and here is like where you're all right, and then the children do this. And it's like all of this is like
Expressed so
so.
accurately, I think.
Yeah, so you know so then we will look at those family patterns, and then we see ourselves almost wanting to repeat all of those just habitually, like, oh,
Right.
so often, actually, my friends even say, I found myself saying exactly the same thing to my kid that my mom used to say to my kid. How terrifying
Mm.
is that? Because it is
It's certainly a
terrifying, because
shock realizing.
yes, because it's unconscious. You see, this is so much in your DNA that you are like, oh wow, I'm trying to change here. So even yesterday we were talking with my husband, and
Yeah.
and we were saying we have to break those patterns, those deeply ingrained patterns. They have to break with us. They have to leave us, because I don't want to, and neither does he. We don't want to put on the same traumas and just
Right.
create the
Right.
same circle.
Right.
What they call samsara. Just never-ending suffering, never-ending
Right.
suffering. We don't want that for our children, and this is very, very difficult. It means you have to really put in the work. You have
Mm.
to really catch yourself. What am I doing habitually? What am I saying habitually?
Right.
But also, you are under very kind of difficult circumstances where you're not sleeping. You're not
Yes.
eating much. You're you know
Yes.
you're and of course, there's also other commitments. There's work, there are parents, sisters, brothers, everyone have their own demands.
Sure.
you know and so this all kind of comes in, all very condensed. And this is the most challenging part, definitely. The diapers, clothes, sleepless nights, nothing compares, I feel, in my experience, to really just being very bold and blunt with ourselves, and being like, okay, how can we raise our children in a dignified way,
Right. Right. Right.
in a
Right.
way that later, when they are 18 or 15,
Mm.
that they don't tell us, oh, you're such a bad mom or such a bad dad, I'm not going to talk to you for a few years, or so
Wow.
that they don't run away, so that they want to be our friends, so that.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
if they have a problem, they come to you first, and that they don't hide away somewhere and create more problems. This is, like, remember, I don't know, maybe with you it was a little bit different,
Yeah.
maybe due to cultural something, but remembering us,
True. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
remembering
So,
us,
so
how
I
we were
wanna
treated.
actually digress a little bit with some context here, because you were born in Latvia, and you
Yes.
lived the first half of your life in Latvia, and with all
Yes.
those cultural norms and preferences, and you also almost attribute your own culture, as I recall, to being Russian as well. Now,
Yes.
I would actually recall a lot of similarities in Russian familial family traditional values with Middle Eastern ones. You know, this whole you got to marry by this time. If you're 30, that's it. Good luck finding a man, that kind of thing, right? These are just things that I'm just calling back that you told me. Like, you can nod your head to say like, "Yep, that sounds about right," or "Nope, that's different." But it's also interesting to me that I feel like you're also a multicultural person. I feel like because you spent the latter half of your life in the UK, that's where you kind of grew up into being a master trainer, into doing your practice with brain education. You only came back to Latvia in the last 2 years. That's where everything happened. Like the husband, starting your own center, and then also like the kid as well. So like everything just kind of like whoop, in 2 years. We're gonna get back to this point you said earlier about making our kids better than us, because I feel like the challenge. But I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna let you talk about the culture. But I feel like the challenge that you just mentioned about the hardest thing about the kid in terms of managing and balancing your relationships is actually something that is of a challenge throughout your life, making sure that you're pure or cleansed so that you don't pass on anything to anyone else, even to your marital relationship. But before we do that, tell me a little bit about this whole cultural thing, right? Where do you think it placed you as a Latvian, as a person of the world, as an Earth citizen, as a mom, when it comes to the multicultural context of your background? That certainly says
Okay.
something, right? Like,
Okay,
yeah,
I'll do
where to
that.
start? Multicultural.
Yeah, in terms of a culture, in terms of a culture, I really try, or I really want to raise my child as the child of the earth, as a true earth citizen,
Right.
because especially here in Latvia, and this is, I was born in USSR,
Right.
in the territory of Latvia, and especially here, there's so much conflict between nationalities, so much division, so many things, and actually going to the UK really expanded myself. I really expanded myself. I really expanded my point of view, because I came into the country where even more nationalities were
Right.
coexisting
Right.
together, and it
Right.
was even more. And I was like, wow, we're only fighting about like these two nationalities, but there's like, this kind of so many people and so many opinions and so many things, in general. So I of course see myself as a human being of the world, of the cosmos, much
Cosmos.
bigger than Latvia or the UK. And I
Yeah.
would love to raise my child just knowing that he is rooted in the earth.
Right.
He's rooted in the mother earth that is always supporting him. When he cries sometimes, I keep telling him, you are supported by the earth and by the sky, and then by us, by your parents. So we're always together. You're completely safe.
Right. Right. Give us some context just real quick. How young is your son right now? Where are you in his?
5.5 months.
Oh wow, great, awesome, awesome. And so it was 2.5 years ago almost now that you moved from Latvia. And when did you meet your husband?
I met him maybe a year and a half ago,
A year and a half
maybe a little
ago.
bit more,
Right.
a little bit more than a year and a half ago. Yeah.
Right. So you came in, you started your center, you wanted to continue your vision and practice of brain education in your place. And you had all these things of like, your affiliation with the UK, the European system and the network there. But also you were looking towards, building a personal life of your own. Now that's really interesting to me as a master, because we often go through this question ourselves, right? So to give everybody some context here, so a master trainer, right? Like you can be a Don master in the brain education system, which is like a master in the community. What that means is you elevate, you grow, you do all the workshops, you do all the classes, you do the time, you do the growth, you know. But then at the end, you decide, where do I go from here? Mastery of self. You end up being a master, and you do a few classes. You still have a full-time job. You do all that stuff. But when you choose to be a Jidoja, or otherwise like a Jedi Knight warrior master, you're in it. Like you're in it. This is your vision. This is like all you do. This is done and done, right? And so a lot of people may have that preconception of like, this is like a monk life almost. Now, I don't really think of it as a monk life as much as I just devote a lot of my energy towards doing this. And I know that Anastasia actually has similar values. The thing is, how would it be any different from anything else you're really passionate about? I mean, I could even quote Elon Musk and saying, if you're not working 120 hours a week in a tech startup, you're bound to fail. It's incredible the amount of time you just need to devote to a vision. Now, in the midst of all this expectation, right, you decide to have a family. And you said in an earlier conversation, you had the itches to kind of like, I need to have a kid soon. So tell me about that whole dynamic, like this vision, because this relates to almost anybody who's passionate about their work, vision, you know, just want to leave an imprint on the floor, on the earth, and just do good by people. And then yet having the personal desire to have a family and a kid. So please, please, please elaborate on this one point. I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Well, my husband, he's a scientist, and he's a scientist 24 hours a day, whether he has a kid or no kid, whether he has a wife or no wife, so, and he's very devoted to his work. And the same way as my father is an engineer, he's always an engineer, whether he has kids or no kids. So, and we kind of, and my husband doesn't have, he doesn't actually stop with his work
Right.
in his mind ever.
Right.
I think it's the same process with me, because it's just who I am. I consider vision very, very precious. It's my dream. This is my purpose, my dream, my really big dream. So
Yeah.
I consider it very precious. I hold it very deep in my heart. And to me, vision is about, anyway, it's about raising my consciousness. It's about raising my consciousness first,
Right.
Healing myself first. And even though we sort of say there is a time limit on vision too, but actually vision is, also there is a time limit on creating a family. That's just a fact. And when it is.
It's funny you say this, because we often argue, like here in the team, Manira like argues like, this is a fact, Wanjani manager.
Yeah.
This cannot work. And then it's like, I don't know. Isn't the job of us as masters to bend time and space to disprove facts, right?
Yeah, no, of course. Of course. But then, I've just given birth. And in terms of giving birth,
Right.
I feel like just in terms of that physical process, I would have rather done that 10 years ago, not 10 years later.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it is a very hard, physically very hard exercise. Okay. It's a very hard exercise.
All right, got you. So
Try to
time-sensitive
imagine-
process. Time-sensitive
Yeah, try
process.
to imagine what that would feel like for you. So
She's asking me stuff I can't do, guys. I just don't know.
imagine hypothetically, because it's like we don't want to think about it, but babies do come out that way, and it is hard. It is hard.
We should
It's very
make this
hard.
show like a PG something. I don't know.
Maybe don't put that in a podcast, actually. But it is a very hard, physically very hard, long process.
Right.
But anyway, so there is a certain time limit on a family, and I feel deep in my heart, if my mind, hopefully my mind never changes. But if my mind never changes, then I will always work for vision.
Right.
Vision work is never ending, actually. It's never ending, because while we're here on earth, we will always have ego. We will always have
So
soul, we will always have these two elements. It is never ending work. So we will always work, but to have a family, for me, there is a certain time limit. I mean, sure, maybe I could have postponed it another 15 years, that's fine. But then I don't think I can postpone it any longer than 15 years
Yeah.
from now on.
Yeah.
And so I felt this feeling, I had this feeling that I really would like to expand in this way. And so I spent a really long time in deep meditation, asking myself, and whether this is really the right way for me, because I also accepted the fact that maybe this is not the way for me. Maybe, my husband was like, oh, now I really understand this child-free movement. He's like, I really get it.
He get it. He had to meet with someone who prized family values and traditions a little less than their own vision. And he's like, oh, you know what? Now that I see someone else who actually believes that, I get it.
But now he has a child. So I'm like, I'm sorry, you're not in the child-free movement anymore.
Reality check. We have a kid.
Yeah, but he's like, I really get those people because it's true. It's much harder to focus on your work, much harder. So right now, so this is touching on a very deep, very personal, very, scary, terrifying subject for me is the great postpartum depression, and this is really, really tough. And actually, right now, I have, this is probably an age thing, to be honest, but I have quite a lot of friends that have given birth right now. I feel like it's age plus the lockdown,
Got it.
something like that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the lockdown. What are we going to do?
Yeah, but actually my baby, before the lockdown.
People, don't you, I'm gonna pose a question. Don't you feel that people generally do need something to do? They generally need to occupy their minds with something, right? Whether it's the right cause, whether it's just focusing on symptoms, whether it's just busy work, that thing that itches that you just need to kind of occupy your mind with. I think people feel the need for that sometimes.
Of course.
Especially when vacant.
The thing is, there's a lot of talk about this right now. We are so lonely, and this has been highlighted so much I don't know how the situation is where you are, but here we're still in lockdown. There is still not a lot of, actually nothing is opened, and this has highlighted, and this has been already, I think a year of like lockdown. So, the loneliness has been really highlighted.
Extreme.
And I feel also as well, this whole pandemic situation, funny we're touching on that now as well. But yeah, the whole pandemic situation is just another means for us to highlight our very pressing problems in the humanity right now. And one of them is, this loneliness, this feeling that that everyone is trying to run away from. And this is where, oh my God, I need to do something. I need to do something. Let's have a baby. Some people say,
something to run away with. You didn't know what you were running into.
Yeah. Some people say like, okay, I will just bury myself in work. But and all of these things are fine if you're going into this consciously. But of course. Some people unfortunately go into addictions and many different patterns, and it is really sad right now. There's so many more suicides, so many relationship problems, so many people are getting divorced because they're kind of they cannot deal with the feeling of. So many people are realizing now, oh, I felt lonely even though I'm married. I feel so lonely. Why? And this is actually because, well, you have to find out for yourself, dear listeners, why you're lonely. But actually,
she doesn't leave you. She's the true and true master, trying to guide you to the truth.
But we are so disconnected from nature. Unfortunately, it breaks my heart. We're so disconnected, and even when you find the connection with yourself, with nature, there's still feeling of loneliness.
Right.
But you can turn that around, and you choose. That's one of the principles. life is nothing.
Right.
You choose the meaning for life.
Right. Right.
Life is nothing. Life itself,
Has no purpose.
it's a drop in the ocean.
Right.
There is you're just a leaf that fell off the tree,
Right.
and you're doing your own thing,
Right.
but you assign yourself to the meaning. The leaf can say, because
Yes.
of me there is fresh air. And then and you can assign yourself, and then the leaf is growing happy,
Mm,
and doing things.
right.
So yeah, what was your question? Did I answer even?
You certainly touched on it. So we started off with the whole expectation of the master thing, and then you kind of coming into the
Yeah,
time sensitivity of it, and that you felt like you really need to kind of. And then we talked
for me,
about.
this was just an answer to a very deep meditation that I did. Who is to judge whether this was a right decision or not a right decision? I
Right.
don't feel there is an ultimate judge of this. I just feel there is a decision in the heart of my vision, also of my family. I feel they're so interlinked together,
Right.
because it's ultimately, it is about me raising consciousness of my family. What is
Right.
difficult, and what I
Right.
so understand why masters or people don't have kids,
Right.
because it is very difficult to keep your purpose
In
because
check.
there's so many things coming up when you have a baby,
Sure.
so many things,
You,
and yeah.
Sorry, I just have to like just come in and say something so profound in what you're saying. That it resonates so strongly with what I often tell my own members when they come to train with me or when we talk, is that the content of what you do is so far less important than the context in which you do it in. So if you have the mind and you hold the mind that whatever it is you're doing, be it raising a family, raising a child, or even starting a project or starting another relationship or anything like that, is going to be of detriment to what it is you're doing, that mind alone has already decided the contents of whatever else is going to happen. So the context in which you do everything is much more important than the content and the details and what you do. So if you come into a situation thinking, this is going to help me grow, like, even if it's my vision, vision was for me essentially. Vision is what I use to help myself grow. So this and everything I choose is for my own personal growth. If that becomes the case, your life will be designed in a way that will give you challenges that help you grow. And in fact, challenges is the one sure way you know you are growing. But are you growing to the right vision? Are you growing to the right consciousness? That's where you got to keep such a strong bulldog, like a watchdog on your mind, just to kind of like cement it in fact. This is all growth. This is all learning. This life is so that we can excel to a certain pace, to a certain level, and then move on from there, right? And so everything that comes into it, husband, no husband, kid, no kid, more kids, less kids, all of it is growth, and all of it is an example. In fact, you're living a life. I would say, if I was to look at it from a very different perspective, if I could say you're living a life in which you are choosing to raise the child irregardless of the norm of someone who's very vision, passion driven, and someone who chooses to have their life as the example of someone who can choose all what he wants, create all what they want or what they desire even, and use their ego to the advantage of their soul, and use their ego to the advantage of their consciousness and growth, because in the end, it's this body that's going to take you there, right? This is the body that's going to have to face to the challenge and go through it, as Anastasia just explained and expressed very vividly how hard the process is physically. that's that's gonna grow some that's gonna grow some stuff inside your brain, I'm sure. So that's just my remark, and at the same time, it's a compliment to what it is you're saying, affirming what it is you're saying. I believe that if you choose the context, the right mind, what you choose in terms of the content from then on is totally irrelevant if you continue to hold and persevere in preserving that one mind.
Yes, I mean, really, I hope I will succeed. I see how easy it is to get a detour, because I say, there are so many things, coming up with just physically maintaining the baby is quite a sort of demanding, time demanding exercise, but also, the emotionally and everything, it
Right.
is, of course. But then, when I think about it, I decided to live 120 years.
Right.
What is those 3 years of really, hard, time consuming work? It is really almost nothing.
Mm.
In the grand scheme of things, I know the baby is not only for 3 years.
Good wide perspective. Good
Yeah,
wide
I
perspective.
know, it's much more, of course, and of course, they say like little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems, but also also
That's
what
funny. Little
I
kids,
have
little
to
problems. Big
remember.
kids, big problems. You just wait till
Also,
you get their teenager. That's a big problem.
yeah, also what I have to remember,
Mm.
and that a child is essentially, a guest in your house.
Mm.
They come in, they will go, they will
Mm.
leave. They don't stay there forever. I mean, in some cases they do, but but it's not the norm.
Right.
They go, they get their own interest, they get their own life. Honestly, in the
Just as you
UK,
did.
like, they go to school at the age of 4.
Mm.
Here they go to school at the age of 7, but they
Yeah, that's
get.
closer to Korea. Korea would be like closer to 8. Some parts of Europe, again, in the 7s and 8s as well. It's here locally in the Middle East, as well as, I guess, some parts of, yeah, in the UK too. They start off pretty young, pretty early in education. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and and then, at some point they will turn 18 and they will go. They will
Mm.
start their own family. They will have their own thing, and actually, it's not such a long time. It's really not such a long time.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
you can remember yourself when you were, 7, 8.
Can I? I mean, it's funny. What the thing that I'm recalling personally, as you're touching on the subject, is tickling something that's really interesting. That actually my mom and I had a little interesting discussion about. So, when I mean, I don't remember any of this, but they tell me that I was a devil's child when I was growing up. Like, I was be the one who created all the mischief, very mischievous person, like the
I
kind
didn't
where,
think
like, as soon as grandma leaves, I take off the clothes and I smear chocolate all over and I pretend like I'm alone and I'm abandoned and she's outside, and I wait until she's past the gate, so she has to get her keys back out to open it again. And then I start smearing and I say, "Well, you left me all alone, no food in the house, no blah, blah, blah." Making her look bad to all the
Yeah.
pedestrians that are passing by. And she's like, "Get in there. Just get back in there." So, of course, I was fine. There was even a housekeeper taking care of everything, right? But I was really mischievous as a kid. Then they told me that in my, when I grew up to be 4, 5, 6, 7, that I became really responsible, really diligent, very disciplined, older than my years, as they said it. And I remember this, like tucking in the chairs of other classmates before myself going out into the break, right? So I tuck in, and I was in grade 2. I remember this, like I was tucking other people's chairs in and stuff like that. And this probably came in with the whole martial arts thing that I started when I was younger. But the interesting thing, fast forward to now, and when I'm around my mom, she's like, "Oh, you're such a pain, probably more than what you were when you were a teenager." She's like, "You're a teenager now." And I'm thinking, it's so interesting to live the years you're in, especially as a kid. Like, when you're meant to play, play. Because as a teenager, I probably wanted to explore and discover quite a bit, and I did. But maybe in the sense that was for how can I say, there was a value to my next step, like university or college or something like that.
Wonder why you felt so responsible for your
Right,
environment.
right. And it comes back to what you were saying earlier about what the parents give us, what DNA we've gotten from them, and we're living around their environment. So you have two examples right there as to how to live a life, right? And of course, when I think my parents, I think, highest academic achievement, highest blah, blah, blah. They're both gynecologists. So that's why this particular topic of birth and pre and postnatal is also kind of like really a home thing for me, right? So that's their background. But later on, I mean, yeah, I deliberated about discovery, and I wasn't like a book nerd. Yeah, that's the term, a book nerd. But I was really active just in general, but it was all towards that thing of success, right? So active extracurricularly, active in my music. And I was very talented, really good design, really good singer, really good blah, blah. So multi-talented. But when I came to being an adult, like it was only in my late 20s and early 30s that I really started to explore the things I wouldn't dare to explore before, new stuff, right? So this is the play now. This is play to me. Me inviting someone, creating this background, this is play now. And I'm actually a little bit more difficult for my mom to manage at this point. She's like, you're just out there now. So
Bless
it's
her.
interesting
See,
that you say that.
it's
Yeah.
big problems. You see.
Big problems, big problems. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Absolutely.
anyway, you have left your mom, right? She has now time to do her stuff, to do her vision.
Well, she's certainly taking the time to do everything she wants to do. Yeah, so my parents, they manage the medical center. My dad is the one who he manages the medical supplies company, but he's still a gynecologist. He doesn't practice as a gynecologist. My mom doesn't either, but they both turned administrative in a way. So they're very focused on taking care of other people's well-being, be it their staff or patients or whatnot.
Yeah.
So that's really cool that they are taking the time. And I guess you're right. When I get busy with my own thing, they're not going to be so concerned with everything that I need input into, even though they gave me that support and feedback when I wanted it, so that I can actually still feel to this day that when I want to speak to them, that I can. And it's not a blockage. It's not any question. It's not a remark. It's really a fast forward of what you were saying. When you create that abundance of I'm here for you, that that you can come back to them. So I mean, it's beautiful hearing you say that you're starting all these things right now, and this prenatal education that you touched on, in a way, it is prenatal, because you got to make sure that this is what you're passing on to your kid. You got to be aware that this is a pretty difficult process, that you are going to be managing a lot of different relationships. You are going to be talking about a lot of different things that really matter to people when it comes to prenatal. Now, I want to get into the whole during pregnancy phase, because you talked about a lot of things before to me about how you felt the practice. Now, this is really interesting, right? So the prenatal, the whole education, preparing your mindset and whatnot to having a baby. But during the process, as in, there's something inside of you. There's so much we could talk about here, right? You talked about the alienation process of there's something inside of me and it's kicking. And then there's the whole you as a mom managing yourself and everything you're feeling, and what you did to do that. So please, tell us the story. What were the highlights of that story? What do you think were the lessons?
Pregnancy.
The pregnancy.
That alienation thing, it's so funny, the baby actually, what I find fascinating, okay? The baby has their own routine inside of you. So I actually thought, when I'm eating, he's eating. When I'm sleeping, he's eating. No. He's sleeping when he wants and he's awake when he wants. So I would be sleeping, but he's awake there kicking. And I'm like, hello, can we get a minute here? Some rest.
Can we get in sync over here? Did you not get the memo?
I have put it in your diary. Why are you not following?
Send it in your brain. Psychokinesis the freaking kid into memory journal.
Straight. I was actually really surprised. I genuinely thought, that mom and baby are so synced. They're not. He's a completely separate being inside of my body. So essentially, I definitely felt this feeling of him sort of renting my space inside of me.
Oh my God.
For a while,
I've never heard that. Renting a space.
Yeah. And
your landlord says to keep it down.
Exactly. But essentially, and there were days where I felt kind of a little bit for the lack of a better word, I don't know what the other word would be, but a little bit used, oh my goodness, because it's tiring, okay? Because it's really tiring.
Draining.
I don't know. I was, at maybe month 6 or whatever, I came to the doctor and I was like, why? All these other pregnant women, they're walking around looking so glamorous, looking so happy on a 9th cloud.
Right.
What's going on? And she was like, I think that's only in the movies. She was like,
where are these women? Where are they? Let's find them. Let's pin them down. Let's count them out. Let's tally right now. Where are these women? Anyone who's looking glamorous and pregnant, please let me know. I'd love to talk to you.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like actually you do get that sort of natural glow. Your hair looks amazing while you're pregnant. Actually, I still have my pregnancy hair. There you go. I mean,
Oh,
actually, because for some reason they don't fall out while you're pregnant. It's like, and then they grow, and you do become sort of glowy and shiny and beautiful. But actually, the process is so tiring. It's really tiring. And I feel, actually, I was discussing it with a friend the other day that gave birth just now as well.
right.
And she was like, "Do you remember how during pregnancy we slept even less than now?" Because it's so uncomfortable. It's so uncomfortable. And and it's heavy. And another thing is there is this big hormone that just hits you,
Right.
and it's relaxin,
Yeah.
and making everything so relaxed in your body
You
that
have
you're
to be.
so
You have to be.
tired.
Yeah.
Because actually this hormone hits you because it needs to make sure that some of your structure relaxes, so that your
I was about
pelvic
to say,
floor,
yes.
whatever, everything. I'm not a doctor, I don't really know, but so that everything relaxes.
Yeah,
And
from what I
actually,
gather, you have to be a little forgiving, or your body has to be little forgiving to accommodate for all the different changes,
yeah,
the
yeah,
organ
yeah.
movements, the uterus expanding, even your movements as all this is happening inside of you. You have to
Yeah,
be a
totally.
little
Yeah.
forgiving. You probably experience some interesting range or flexibility whilst in that zone.
Yes, but you have to be careful not to overdo it because there is this natural tendency of being more flexible.
Right.
So, but actually, so I did feel very tired, and I was doing a lot of things. So I would be sometimes like sleeping until the very last minute, then getting up and being like, okay, I have a class in 15 minutes, and then I'd be like,
No.
doing all the everything. you know and it was like this. But actually, having said that, actually, uh, some of the women and we some of the women really take it, like, oh, I'm so tired, and then I'm not moving. And I feel this is also sort of, if it feels right for you, do that. But for
Right.
me, it didn't feel right. For me, it felt, actually, my body is very used to movement
Right.
anyway.
Right.
I have been, moving and very active pre-pregnancy. So
Right.
during pregnancy, it was really important that I maintain that level of activity. Of
Right.
course, I hushed it down a little bit, like I toned it down a little bit. But actually, for me, it was very important to keep moving. I did gardening. I did oh God, I did everything. I did gardening. I taught class every single day
Wow.
until 7.5 months of
Wow.
pregnancy. I not ran, but I worked in a kids camp, teaching there.
Right.
There was a workshop running at the same time that required like simultaneous
Yeah.
translation.
Yeah.
There were so many things, and I really am glad that I spent my pregnancy active. So
Right.
that I feel this is very important. If you were not active before, please don't start being active when you are pregnant.
Here I was thinking, please start right now. It's never too late. That's the message I was hoping. Like, geez, you're
No,
getting.
no, no. If you are not if you are not really active pre-pregnancy,
Right.
don't like jump in like lifting weights and doing crazy stuff,
Oh, I see
because
what you're saying. Yeah.
yeah, because that also can be dangerous. And actually, I felt this at the very beginning of pregnancy. I felt this almost influx of energy, and actually, I knew already that I was pregnant, but I was doing like 1 minute running exercises a lot, to bring my cardio up. I felt that
Right.
I need my heart to keep running, to keep pumping, and I did quite a lot of things, and actually I did running 3 days before labor because I wanted to give birth. So I was just running around the living room, just going, please, 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 just please. you know,
Let's make it happen. Let's make it happen.
I know, I know. Oh, I see many women actually here doing this, when they're
Wow.
already super big, they just start walking like
Right.
back and
Right.
forth, and,
Right. Right. Right.
what,
Right.
just
Right.
kind of
Right.
get
Right.
the process started.
Okay, so man, you just made this question really difficult because here I was going to ask you, like, how did practice help you? And then you're just saying, well, don't do practice if you haven't done it before. But the
No,
funny
no,
thing
I feel,
is, I think that advice applies to anyone who wants to jump into an active lifestyle, just don't just jump into it. Start off small, like, and build up from there. And if you want to walk, if you want to run a marathon, like a 10K marathon, start with walking a kilo and then build up from there. So progression is the deal. So any trainer could tell you that progression is the deal for sure. But please, let's let's keep it.
No, but of course, I mean, of course, prenatal yoga practice, like the practice that we teach, really is really, really, really helpful. Don't get me wrong. It's really helpful.
Let's get into this. I want to know, how is it helpful? How did brain education help you? And why was it different from everything else you tried?
It helped me during the pregnancy specifically. It definitely helped me with my back. It definitely helped me with my legs. They were definitely not as swollen as they could have been.
And you had a pre-existing condition, right? Your back was prone to having, let's say, a little bit more damage or injury, or a little bit weaker too. So elaborate on how the practice, let's say, helped you up into the pregnancy and maybe even during, for that particular point, because that was, I think, the main pain point for you, right? The low back specifically.
For sure. Yes.
And what that meant for having a kid too. Yeah.
When I was younger, much younger, I don't remember how old I was, but I had this back injury. Wait, I know. I was actually 18 years old.
Oh,
no,
wow.
19 years old. 19, yeah. So not that much younger, I was 19
course.
years old.
Yes, you can't tell. Yeah, yes. Pregnancy.
I'm only 21.
Advertisement. Plug for pregnancy.
Yeah, so when I was 19 years old, I had a big injury in my back.
Right.
And so actually this made a lot of, it was a really long journey, but kind of to cut to the point, I visited a doctor. There were many, many things. And he said, basically, it's kind of bad. So I had an injury in my lower back, and he said, it's kind of bad and you need to have a surgery. But it's, of course, so many complications with the surgery on your back, because it can go so wrong, but it can go right, but it can go really wrong. So, of course, the side effects can be, that you end up being paralyzed. I mean, this is really serious stuff. So, but he said, but with the existing back condition, it will probably be impossible for you to go full term with pregnancy.
Right.
So actually, I had this injury at 19 years old, and I kept trying to do many, many, many things. And I think I got to this doctor when I was already 21, so 2 years later. But that was me, 2 years actively doing something about the back, actively visiting many different things. And by that time already, it was already even worse. So he said there's probably very little chance that you will be able to go full term with pregnancy, without any kind of extreme measures being taken. So, of course, at that time, I was really upset. But also, at that time, I didn't have any plans to have children anytime soon. And so I thought, okay, I will, there's no way back. I will heal it. I will do something about it.
Oh, that decision.
Yes, and it was very hard, because I kept looking, and then finally I have found the practice, and it is really a true story. By the time I found the practice, I was a mess physically. I had migraines every second day, very strong migraines. My lower back was really bad. There were many things going on to do with the spine, and so the practice definitely has moved that. And during pregnancy, literally, I was on my last days of pregnancy, I was so huge. I was ginormous. And I was just, kind of waddling.
Waddling. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a new walking term. Waddling.
I was waddling down the road, and someone looked at me, I think my neighbor or someone, and he was like, oh, back must be killing you. And I was like, wow, I didn't even feel it during the whole pregnancy, not even once, not even a trickle of that pain at all. My back did not cause any problems. I didn't even feel it. And I thought, wow, actually, how far have I come from not being able to bend or get up, or, to having a full term of, healthy baby by myself,
You can still do the
without anyone.
full bend right now, right? Like full bend, everything's fine, everything's checked
Yeah,
out.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Everything
Okay.
is totally fine. Everything is totally
I'm
fine.
like this close to asking you to
So,
demonstrate that for us, but it's okay. It's okay. Cool.
but actually, maybe sometime later. But, but actually, yes. What has really helped was actually what is really important. I feel this is really important to say on the process of healing the back. There was definitely a point, especially towards the beginning of me trying to fix the issue or heal the issue. Was the thing is it almost always the problem gets worse first.
Right.
Because the spine was so misaligned, it had to realign. New muscles had to strengthen the whole back.
Change
So
can be painful.
it was very painful process, and it was at the beginning a lot more painful. So if
Right.
you are in a process of training, and if something is hurting your spine, your neck, your knees, whatever it is, and if you're feeling after 10, 20 classes, whoa, this is getting worse right now, please do not give up. It
Right.
actually means you're on the right direction, because things need to readjust in your body
Right.
enough
Right.
for this to actually heal. So it took me uh, let me remember. It took me 6 months for me to reduce my migraines to like once every 2 months.
Oh wow.
So at the beginning they were every second day. Then they
Wow.
started to be once a week, and then once a month.
Right.
And then in 1 year, since that time I've never had a headache, never had a migraine.
Incredible.
So it took me 1 year to heal migraines. It took me a little longer to heal the back, but also that was my issue for longer.
Right.
But I have not had any back problems since then. But also, I am training. I'm
Right.
training. I'm doing things, and so I don't want to experiment what will happen if I don't train.
Right.
But
So here I am in the
maybe.
mind of the listener, right? Just wondering what on earth is she doing to make that much of a drastic change? Like, what are the specifics to what you did during the practice that you felt contributed the most to this low back transformation?
Okay, you mean like, well, actually, lower back specifically,
Well,
it's.
yeah, I mean this low
Yeah.
pain, this no migraine state of like transformation.
Yeah.
Like, what were the things what were the elements inside the practice that you felt most contributed to that transformation?
Well, for me, it was all about the spine, and so many things in the practice are about aligning the skeleton,
Right.
opening up your joints, and this is actually very interlinked. Opening up, your jaw, opening up your hips,
Right.
opening up your shoulders,
Right.
aligning your spine,
So there's that
and
qigong, there's that rotation, there's that
yes,
do-in of opening up the meridians that are tied into the joint circulation.
there
Yes.
is then there is strengthening the core very deeply. So that would
Dungeon.
be your sleeping tiger. That would be
Right.
your intestine exercises.
Holding up the hands and the legs, as my some of my members like to call it, the cockroach pose, but that is sleeping tiger.
Yeah, that's right. But this is something that has helped me immensely in my lower back, in healing my lower back. And then also the bowing. The bowing
Okay.
has helped me probably the most, actually.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's all together.
It's all together.
interlinked.
Okay.
So another element is, of course, the mindset. So you have to really, really, really choose. You have to really go through something, because
Wow.
your bodily pain is probably almost always interlinked with your mindset.
True.
And I felt that my lower back pain was deeply connected
Right.
to my fear, very deep fear. And actually, I felt that when in the process of me training and in the process of me healing, at some point, I got so afraid of my back just never getting better. And actually, I got so afraid that through the practice, I will make it worse, because it was so painful.
Right.
So I thought, oh no, now is the time that I will make it worse, and I will never go back to being
And that's
normal.
when members quit. When they quit, when
And
it's
this is
about to
when
transform. Yeah.
This is normally when most people go, I will just take a step back, let it be okay,
She
and
said
then go
it.
back again.
She
Oh
said
no,
it.
it's painful. And I go back again. Oh no, it's painful. And this is the process. So at that point, I was
Stick it out, ladies
24,
and gentlemen.
I
Stick
think.
it out.
I was maybe 24 or 25. And I remember vividly laying on the floor, not being able to get up. It was, I think, after a class or something like this. My back was really painful. And I remember making that mind up. I was thinking, it's either now or never. I have nothing to lose. If I lose my back completely, then okay, at least I've tried everything, because I have tried already everything. I have
Right.
nothing to lose. At
Right.
that time, I had no kids, I had no family. It was just me and my back problems that
Right.
were, and I already had enough. I already had, years of the back problems, of really severe back problems. And I made that choice that I either, because all the masters were telling me, go through it, go through it, go through it. And I was not believing. And then I was feeling, okay, what will happen if I go through? Let's check.
Yes, because
Because
we often stay on one side of that story. Like, oh, what if happens if I do go through? What will happen? And that
yeah, yeah, yeah.
fear-driven thinking and kind of projection. Whereas, can we take a break from that for a moment and then say, okay, pain is almost inevitable. We're retreating back into pain because that's our current condition, and then we're
Yeah.
accepting a little bit more. But what if I do go through? What happens on the other end? And it's
Yeah, yeah.
almost every practitioner's journey to almost accept pain into this immense euphoria of relief. Yeah, but they have to
Yes,
go
yes,
through.
yes, yes. And so I made this choice. I remember it very vividly, that I will just trust for a second here, and I will go through and see what happens. And of course, and from that point on, it became a little worse still, and then it
Right,
started to become better.
right.
And then from that point on, there were times when I would come back to that pain, make that choice again, and go back. And eventually, I mean, really, I honestly, for the whole pregnancy, I even forgot I ever had back problems. I completely forgot of it. I'm
That's
not,
crazy to me. Like you
yeah,
needed someone to point it out to remember that you never had the issue the entire time.
yeah, 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 yeah. And I remember the times when I was 20, I would bend to pick something up, and then I couldn't. I couldn't become straight again.
Right.
It was so bad. It was my lower back was so bad. So yes, this has helped me immensely. Also, just
I
just
love it.
knowing that I can make that choice and go through.
Yeah.
And I really wish whoever is on that journey,
Look, I don't know. I don't
trust
know what
yourself.
practice that you choose to have, ladies and gentlemen, in your life, but if you can get one with these elements involved, where you have the right stuff being done to the body, one that is musculoskeletal centric, one that is opening of circulation, that is mind as well as body in terms of being conscious about how you move the body, feeling the changes in terms of moving the body, not just submitting your body to to an exercise and then leaving and then, well, I hope it's working, and then surrendering to the symptoms after if it works or it doesn't. But you're very conscious of the effects of what is being done to, and what is it doing at the same time, and put that all together. Put the mindset into it too, where you also have to be tested on your mind's state so much consciously that you have to choose. It's a very conscientious practice where you either choose it or you don't. And no one who comes to us is coming by accident. Like they have to choose. So every time you do come, I mean, that can sound a little heavy, but no, it isn't. Like you can come in and you'll feel better. But for
This
real
is so
growth,
empowering.
the stoic powering, that's it. The stoic
It is,
empowering. It's like,
because
go
you
on.
know that you are in control of your life, not in really in control. Of course, actually, that's the thing about the birth that really smacked me. That's
Can I
it.
tell him the story? She was so, it was so funny. We had a talk like what was it, like a month and a half away from when you were giving birth, and she was like, these women, they don't know their bodies well enough. I'm sorry, I'm like teasing you a little bit. They don't know their bodies well enough. There's like an alien inside of them. They
I
have
didn't
to be a
sound like that.
right? No, she didn't. I'm impersonating someone else, but it was her words. So she's like, they have to be aware of their body so that the birth will become easier. Otherwise, they don't have that sensitization. Pulling out all these brain education jargons. And then I'm like, how was it? She's like, oh, it was terrible. And it's so funny. She was a true value. Like she had the ideals down. She had the ideology down, the method. And she was like, it's going to be fine. And then she called me there. She's like, 30 hours of I don't know what. And this was terrible. Sorry, I just had to.
Yeah, yeah. No, because actually you that's what I've learned through giving birth.
Mm.
You are the master of your life. You create your own environment. And also, there is something called nature, and we have to be humble. We have to learn.
Tell him,
And
Anastasia. Tell him.
I tell this to myself. I tell this to myself. We have to learn. We have to be humble. I have to be humble. And there is much bigger force at play in general, not only during birth, but in general. Of course, there are certain things you can totally take control of and you can totally do. And uh, many things, actually, many things. And then there are some things that are, you are at the mercy of the great nature. Great nature. You don't really know exactly when you will be born. And that was the thing, we know so many things about nature, but no one could tell me when my baby would be born. Why? Oh, it can be 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there, 2 weeks up, 2 weeks down. No one knew what was going on, and this is, like, no one knows. No one knows when we are born. No one knows when we die.
Right.
No one knows. No one knows when this life will just stop like that.
True.
So there is a much bigger force at play during those things. So for me, the process of birth.
قدر الله ما شاء فعل. We have this saying, and it's coming from like whatever God wills, that's what's gonna happen.
For me, the birth was the biggest process of letting go ever, because I also had this pressure on myself. I'm an instructor. I can choose. I know all the techniques. I know the breathing. I know everything. I'm equipped. I feel the baby. I felt the baby from day 2, actually. The doctor was like, oh, the baby's coming from your left ovary. I was like, I know. You don't have to tell me that. Like, I know where it's coming from.
That's some magic master stuff right there. That's for sure.
I really felt it. I felt everything. And then, so yeah. But then, I had to really let go of that. I know everything. I can do everything. I can do everything by myself. I had so much pressure on myself to give birth naturally, because I really wanted natural birth. I really wanted no medication. I healed my back. I healed my horrible migraines without taking any medication.
Right.
And my migraines were really, really, really severe, really painful. I never took any medication for this. Right. And during birth, it was like there were needles pointing at me everywhere, and I was like, no. And still, they were like, the more I was saying no, the more they were like, double dose. And some people may argue that, whatever happened at the hospital, whatever. But actually, I know this was my process of letting go. And it didn't finish. The process of letting go in that way finished only, after maybe 15 or 10 days after the baby was born. Because after that, there was so much more. There was so much more. So many really difficult things that I had to really, really, really let go of. Let go. Right. For the sake of my family, for the sake of this child, for the sake of, having a good, healthy relationship with myself and with my husband and with my baby. And it was really hard. It was a super transformational, period in my life, because of that, because I really, I felt this great, amazing nature that, was like, my darling child, you have to let go of your crazy ego of a super instructor. And I was like, okay, and it was happening, and there was no way back, and it had to happen this way. And sometimes, women do give birth amazingly, and sometimes it does happen that the baby just slides out. Some women do say that. They say, oh wow, I couldn't even do anything. I couldn't even call anyone, and then it just happened, and wow, amazing. Totally not like, it didn't happen for me like that. Totally not my story. Completely not. Yeah. So I had to let go. It was a process of letting go. And as I said, process of just accepting nature and learning how to what can I do with my current environment, how can I grow from there, what can I do, how can I maintain
Yeah.
the consciousness of love in this
Wow.
situation.
Wow. And
So
you were
this
conscious
was
enough, you were on it like a hawk. You were conscious enough to recognize that in that moment.
it
Wow.
was so hard. i wanted to I wanted to go under the ground, I swear. It was so hard. So many things were really, really hard on that level of how do I maintain the consciousness of love
Mm.
and not go into anger, not go into fear, not go into blame.
Yeah.
So many people, blame hospitals for their experience, blame
Right.
their partners,
Right.
blame doctors,
Right.
you know, did I say blame their partners? Because so many people blame their partners,
You weren't
and
there enough. You didn't come to the breathing class with me. I would have gone if you did too. Blah blah blah
yes,
blah 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 blah.
yes, or you are too controlling, you are blah blah. I see so many families breaking up after this point, after
Yeah.
having a baby. Everything was fine, then the baby came, and they got divorced, or they're
Right.
on the verge of a
Right.
divorce, or the baby was born,
Baby can
everything
break
is
or make
fine.
you. Baby can break or
Huh?
make you. The baby can
Yes,
break or make
yes,
you.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So there are so many, and I feel like yes, because of it's so hard to maintain that consciousness of
Yeah.
love, and not go into blaming mode.
Mm.
Become a real victim, which I did feel like a victim.
This
I
is happening
did.
to me. It's not happening to you. Me. I'm the one suffering.
Yes, and I felt like everything was so unfair, and why so much medication, and
Mm.
why everything was so unfair, and no one was listening to me. I was giving birth, and I was saying, "Please listen to me. This is what needs to happen," and they were like, "No, this is not what needs to happen." And I don't know whether I really, until now, I don't know, the hospital, did they save my life and save my baby, or did they somehow interfere with the birthing process? This is a big argument right now in the community about how much the medical Western medicine is helping the process of
Yeah.
natural process of the birth,
Right.
and how much it's actually intervening.
Right.
I don't know, but actually I'm really grateful to these doctors that it
Mm.
ended up
Mind of
in
gratitude.
this way, that I have an amazing, beautiful baby. Everything is fine with me.
Right.
Everything is fine with the baby. My husband is fine. Everyone is fine. But like, I'm super grateful to this. And I know that this whole scenario was my lesson to let go and maintain the consciousness of love. So I cannot say, oh, they did this, oh, I did this, or someone did something.
Right.
It's about me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though I felt so many things,
Right.
unfair or
The
whatever.
fact that they were involved in the process just made them a part of it. Whether they had a single hand or a finger in it, they're in it. They're in the picture. And so
Yeah.
everyone counts. It's almost like you saying, what's the point of me in this world? Well, you're in it. So you're definitely participating just by being in there. So I think I really want to acknowledge the fact that what we said earlier about this, if you have the right mind, can become part of your vision of growing consciousness. So you said very explicitly, I'd never had a more humbling or more a let go kind of lesson than when I gave birth. And you've been a trainer or practitioner for how long?
7 years.
7 years. 7 years a trainer practitioner. And it took a birth for you to really learn that lesson. And building up off
I
of
feel
that.
almost embarrassed.
Yeah, it's like,
Really, I do.
were you
I
really
feel like I
learning?
was
Were you really training? How hard were you training? Something like that.
I was training very hard. I feel like I was sincere, and I was, sincere in my quest for giving a very natural, beautiful birth,
But
because
hey,
I want.
that's the beautiful thing about this practice. There's no divide between when you're practicing and when you're living. Brain education involves the study of principle, the study of practice, as well as the study of living. It doesn't stop. What you did in the practice made you self-aware enough to realize, oh, nature is happening right now.
Yes,
Time for me to love, time for me to accept, time for me to let go, time for me to be
definitely.
humble. Very nicely said. People can learn all of that principle in the first step, But you got to practice of actually letting go once you mentioned the pain and the discomfort in the beginning. You learn it there through practice. But here comes the living. Here comes the banger, right? Here's the one that's going to go, and, and you're like, yeah, that's living. But it wouldn't have happened as smoothly as you did the ability to let go, which is why I don't really care for the fact that it was hard, it wasn't hard, the actual process itself. It's how you were, the context, how your mind was in the process. So I think you gave a very beautiful example of letting go, of accepting, of humbling down to the powers of nature being even more powerful than us, and that we call ourselves master over everything. Design your circumstance, master of time and space, all that stuff. And then yet again, the wave carried us. We weren't riding it this time. And they're really both the same thing. So that's beautiful. And I want to build on top of that because you said something about the consciousness in how you were going forward, and then you kept that going, like with the whole thing. The practice helped you during the birth, and it kept you in line with vision, so you never let go of vision during the pregnancy. Coming fast forward to the post stuff, right? So now the baby's here, and it's the 6 weeks, like where the uterus is kind of like very prone to some inflammation, to any kind of infection. So you have to be careful what you do, what you expose yourself to. Also, at the same time, you're building this rapport and connection with your son now, and then comes the relationship dynamic between you and your husband, what he's going through, what you're going through. So touch a little bit on that if you can.
Yeah. So postpartum is a very amazing time. Uh, I've read today actually a woman saying another practitioner actually. She said, "I've never felt this the love more love and more like I've never felt a love that is more love and terror at the same time."
Wow. Love and
Because
fear right there.
and I
It's not even fear
yes,
anymore. It's terror.
I was
Nightmare.
like, yes, because um, you're giving birth so open and so vulnerable at the end of the process, and postpartum physically. It's very advisable, very, very, very advisable that you spend minimum 15 days in bed.
Right.
Nesting with your baby, communicating with your baby, getting to know each other, learning if you're choosing to breastfeed, um, learning how to breastfeed, learning how to latch, for the baby. It's also a process.
Right.
Um, so also, but this process is not only 15 days. I mean, if you have the opportunity, if you have the time, if you have the resources, please do yourself a favor, and please do your baby a favor
Right.
of spending 15 days minimum
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
bed
Mm-hmm.
nesting,
Right.
in or around the bed. They say in or around the bed. So meaning, yeah, just have the baby with you, skin to skin.
Mm.
It's very important because in these moments, actually, human babies are born a little bit not ready for this world.
Right.
I mean, if you look at all the other animals, they're
Oh,
born
I love
pretty
the
much
story.
ready to go.
I know.
Yeah, pretty much ready to go.
Bloop.
Some of the babies, they just drop out and then they like run, like 20 minutes later,
A horse
or
would run 20 minutes after birth on the dot. It would be like bloop, and then whoop, I'm up.
yeah, and then at the beginning their legs are like all over the place, and then they're fine. And so, but we are born completely not ready
Right.
for this environment, so
Right.
we're very vulnerable, and it's advisable. There's a whole theory of the fourth trimester. If you are in the circumstances that you are wishing to give birth, or you're planning for this, please read up on this. I really highly suggest. There is a lot of information about it. It's about the fact that the baby is not really ready for this environment yet. So
Mm.
it's advisable that you maintain close, skin to skin contact.
Right.
That
So
the
important.
environment is dark.
Yeah.
Maybe like red light if you're really, if you want to go all the way,
Right.
with this
Right.
with
Right.
this
Right.
theory.
Right. Right.
So creating a womb-like experience for the baby.
Yes.
It's also important for you to have this experience with the baby because. So it's hard to explain, but once the baby is out there, first, they're learning how to breathe. at the beginning. They're
Right.
just learning how to breathe. And they have no idea, they have no bodily awareness. So they have no idea that they're separate from
Right.
you,
Right.
So they come out, but they're like, what's this air thing?
Mm.
What do I do? They feel very lost in an open space. I've seen my baby do, actually other babies too, do this sort of thing. They sort of lay there, and then once their hands open like this, they're like and they're lost, lost in space. So you have
Right.
to like bring them like this,
Right.
and
That's that
hug them
memory.
and
Yep.
keep them close and keep them warm.
Right.
So this fourth trimester is very important part in actually psychological development. So the
Right.
babies that are really nurtured and really supported during that time are more confident adults, or even more confident toddlers. They then, because they
Yes.
feel so safe, deeply, so subconsciously, they feel so safe, they're more ready to explore the world, and they just go faster,
Yeah.
without dragging you behind, that
Right.
support, like a support animal, on an airplane.
Mm-hmm.
Support dog, how people do these days, not right now. So without that, they're more prone to being more, more active, more inquisitive. So if you can
Right.
do this, I know
Right.
sometimes circumstances don't allow.
Right.
Some women have to go to work straight after.
Right.
Some women have, 2, 3, 5 children already, and they just cannot,
Right. Right. Right.
or
Right. Right.
because the world doesn't stop when you have a baby.
Sure.
Newsflash: the world doesn't stop when you have a baby. Yeah, I know, surprise. So yeah, but if you have an opportunity, spend first 15 days in bed. Be very mindful first 40 days, because there's still bleeding, there's still,
Right.
you're so raw, so open,
Yeah.
there's still
You
so
should
many
definitely,
things
because
going
that's the highest point where you can actually get an infection, because everything's kind of still taking shape. The uterus is reducing in size. The organs are kind of finding their new placement back again, and all that is where a real vulnerable state, even physiologically. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and the first 100 days are really this very sensitive, very vulnerable time. And after 100 days, you can consider that the baby is already a baby and he's fine.
Right.
Everything is fine. The mother is fine, healed more or less after the birth,
Right.
and the baby is healed after the birth, and is already taken shape, and is already more or less accustomed to the fact that they start to get the sense that they have a lot. At the beginning, you tend to wrap the baby a lot, wrap in different, like, swaddling blankets or different things, so that they can feel their skin, so they can start to feel their boundaries, that the fact that they are
That
kind of
self-awareness,
separate
that proprioception, that
beings.
understanding of where I am in place and context.
Yeah. So after 100 days, they're already like a little person. Before that, they're really so fragile. And so, yes, so that love that I was saying, it's amazing, crazy, mind-blowing, and terrifying, because this totally new, different sense part of the brain switches on. I don't know how this is for men, but for women,
There is definitely
okay,
something that switches on for
for
men as
everyone
soon
else.
as they see the sight of their own son in front of them. There is definitely a switch in the brain that activates so many cognitive or cerebral functions for men that turns on as soon as they see the
Yeah.
sight of their own baby in front of them. It may not
For
be
me,
necessarily the exact same, I don't know, neurotropic factors as women, but it definitely is a process. It happens. Yeah.
for sure, there was this new part of the brain that could not relax even for a second, because it's always worried about the safety. Like
Yeah.
in the womb, the baby is super safe.
Right.
Once the baby is out, it's a very primal thing. I'm sure this is 100% done by nature. It was just like, baby must stay alive, must do anything to keep the baby alive. I was like this. It was crazy. I would wake up in the middle of the night like this. Is the baby breathing? And really, and many, many, many women say exactly the same thing, that they're
Yeah.
constantly checking, is the baby breathing? Oh my God, what is happening? What is happening? Because there was this point where he would just basically cry non-stop,
So
and I was
tell us the
not.
name of your baby, your beautiful baby, so we know.
Sorry, the name?
Yes,
Maxime or Max.
Maxime, Max,
Max, yeah.
Max. Where's
So yeah, so
Max?
Max was crying like crazy, like non-stop. And when he was not crying, he was just going like so there was just this day, he was just constantly he was very, very little, maybe 2 weeks old.
Right,
And and I was falling asleep because not sleeping just at all, because you have to feed every hour. It was
right.
just like it was just like nonstop, nonstop. And at some point,
Wow.
and he keeps like babbling, like saying something like, and
Mm.
I'm kind of dozing off, and I'm sleeping, and I keep hearing his babble, and then all of a sudden he stopped. And I was like, oh my God, why did he stop? Why did he stop? I immediately thought something was wrong. But then, and I opened my eyes, and he was so peaceful, just sleeping so
Mm.
peacefully. I actually have a photo of this moment of him sleeping so peacefully. And I was just feeling, wow, this is such a primal thing. It's so deep, this sort of like, this baby must survive. I must do anything for this baby to survive.
Wow.
So yeah, this completely new part of the brain that opens up that actually doesn't let you sleep. So you want to sleep, you're completely tired, you're exhausted.
Yeah.
Even there was a time when, my husband would take the baby away and be like, okay, there's 1 hour, sleep. But
Right.
I slept, but there was this part of me that was still awake.
Sure. I mean, hormonally,
Actually,
even there's a lot that keeps you very awake, very active. It's not even just the cortisol. There's a lot that happens inside there that kind of keeps the alarm state for sure.
yeah. And this sort of feeling I can see how this can make you go crazy. Actually, right now it's really toning down. Right now I feel much better. This whole breathing, not breathing thing is gone finally, thank
Right,
God.
right.
But I still have this thing every time he cries. It's like it's this feeling of just must do something right now. What's going on? Must run. I must run. This feeling is
Right.
still there. So I still feel this sort of primal, deep, different part of the brain awoke. But postpartum, yes. So this is one part, and of course there's so many women that go depressed.
Yeah.
In that time. And one long time ago, I was doing some training, and there was this phrase: first a woman has to heal the man, and then the man will heal the woman. And I never really understood what that meant until I think my baby was born. And I see that I don't know if women can be fully supported, because also our men are not healed.
Right.
Because can we be fully supported during this most vulnerable, most crazy time?
Yeah.
Because I feel there is definitely an awakening happening. There is definitely more dialogue.
Right.
Like before, I asked many men of kind of a generation older, and I say, how was it for you, when you had babies? How was it? Because I really want to know. And most of them say, well, I just got on with it. I just toughened up, you just do what you gotta do.
Kind of sounds like our
And
live producer a little bit. When I told him about male postpartum depression, he's
yes,
like, what
but
is
that's
that? No, it doesn't exist.
but this yeah, but this is what a lot of men say, but how did that look like? What did that toughen up, blah blah, get on with it? How did it look like? And for a lot of them, it looked like doing extra hours at work,
Right.
going with their mates out to celebrate,
Right.
going blah to places,
Right.
or reading books. Or right now, even I asked one lady actually from the Middle East, and I was like, so what did your husband, because I was thinking maybe it's a cultural thing. I
Right.
said, what did your husband do? And she said, oh, he just started playing video games nonstop.
Right, right. Yeah, I'm gonna interject with just a few things here, just to give a little context to everybody. So, I still feel there's not enough studies or even research done on postpartum male depression. Well, in postpartum male depression in general, because the attributable cause is still a little misnomer. It's a question mark, but they definitely know how to recognize the symptoms, as you said, and the treatments of the modalities that can help. But to give you an idea of how pervasive it is, so in Western studies, let's call it America, UK, something like that, it's 1 in 8 women. So that's kind of like the every eighth woman would have gone through, if she's had a child, a little bit of a postpartum depression. But the interesting thing is that for the Asian continent, there are studies that show up to 65% of women who had postpartum depression. So that's a huge difference. I mean, and that resonates a lot with why I believe I'm here in the Middle East, is that depression numbers, even for the UK, actually, what was it, 12% for all adults in the UK, but up to 20 to 25% here in the Middle East. And that's like still trumping 8% for the US. And so, yes, it is very regional. It is very pervasive. But the interesting thing is, what I didn't find is that there are not enough studies on statistical, let's say how statistics show up for males in the Middle East. So what I do know is that if we were to, just by like a ballpark, 1 in 8 for America or the UK or Western civilization, and then Middle East being 65% as part of the Asian continent, and there's a 10% chance of men getting postpartum male depression, as per Western studies or Western populations, and you would kind of like multiply that number out, there's probably a big chance, I would say, just roughing it out, anywhere between 30 and 60% males getting a chance of postpartum depression here. And you're absolutely right. To build on what you said about it doesn't look like it. It's not the most visible symptom. It's not obvious. And you wouldn't catch it unless you were to, rub
No.
to how can I say, like, shine some light on it, or grease, like you wouldn't even be aware of this being recognized as depression, even here. And so when it comes to depression, I would actually describe it as a different form. I would say it's capacity, because when you look at depression, a lot of the times it's capacity for thought, capacity for emotion, capacity for care, capacity for physical demand or stress. So stress being defined as demand on the body or the brain, capacity, like responsibility, right? So when that responsibility, that kind of word comes from Latin roots of capacity, that capacity reduces a whole lot, and it's often very unstable or very vulnerable. So one day you're like, I'm gonna do everything, and the other day it's like I'm a recluse and become and do nothing, right? And so there's that instability, there's that inordinate of capacity, and so you can't really apply yourself emotionally, not to be able to listen to others, emotional, turmoil, not to be able to go through something that's quite emotional. So you don't have the capacity or the threshold. Neither is it in terms of the physical prowess, nor is it in the mental prowess. So, right? So the gaming, for example, that you mentioned, right? Even when it comes to how much the entertainment industry or gaming rose exponentially during COVID, right? That's also a form of either, filling up time, or realizing like you're limiting your capacity. You're reclusing onto something, another world which doesn't demand so much of you. And a lot of times depression can look like that too, when you really reserve yourself in a certain way, or numb yourself from whatever it is you used to be exposed to in a certain way. So please elaborate, because I know you got some specifics or examples on this exactly.
Yes, I mean, actually, I just, because right now this is such a pressing, hard, very personal topic for me. I talk a lot about it, I try to speak to other young fathers. I try to speak with young mothers, how this is for you, what is going on for you, how, how can we deal with this? How can we help? What can we do? What is going on? How can we, raise this awareness? But when I return back to sort of a slightly older generation, definitely in my culture, there was a lot of drinking, partying, well, yeah, my son was born, I'll go on a 10-day bender, or stuff like that.
We
And
don't
this
need to
has
explain
happened a
that
lot.
if you guys don't
And
know.
maybe in your culture this would look, it would take another different
Right,
form, but
right,
a form of that, a form
right.
of
Some
avoiding.
form of escape or
But here right
isolation
now,
or vice.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And how can a woman be supported while her husband, during the most vulnerable time of her life, is just out, not present, so of course impossible. So anyway, in right now I am asking, I see this man around everywhere, saying, wow, I am struggling, I'm deeply depressed, I don't know how to handle this. And when I ask why, there is such a mixture of things, of also, actually, well, when you give birth, the thing is, it's not all about you.
Right.
It's also about the partner, and your partner is the big, it, your partner is so important.
Yeah.
I know it's kind of funky to say, but a lot of women are like, no, the baby is the most important thing, I don't care about my husband, but no. You are, it's three of you or four of you, or however many kids you have, but if it's your first child, it's the three of you. You are all involved. It's the lives of the three of you. And what do you want?
Right.
Do you want to have a happy, supportive environment for your baby to grow and develop?
Right.
Or do you want to create another single mother or another single father, another broken up family? The divorce rate in here is like 80%.
Wow.
I don't know why they're getting divorced, but I see many people are
It's about
divorced
50,
or
I think,
being
for
able-
us locally here, 50%. But yeah, it could be higher.
50,
Yeah.
Interesting. You are doing something right, maybe. Or you do something more right.
That's like every second person could get divorced here. No, really. But,
but in us, it's like 80%.
oh, wow. Yeah, it's like so.
But
Every fifth
so
person
and so
is
many are
lucky.
divorcing during this period of time as well, I see, or gaining most of their hatred for each other
Right.
during this time. And because maybe most of my friends are people who are sort of anyway kind of looking at themselves maybe a little bit consciously
Yeah.
approaching life. So we are able to talk to our partners. My friend said, oh, you had a baby, get ready for a lifetime of super uncomfortable conversations. And so we're talking about these things, and yes, these men, not only my husband but my husband as well, are saying we're severely depressed. It's crazy. And I say, why? Why? This is supposed to be such a happy thing. But it's because it's showing you, because of that expansion that I was talking about, because it is your expanded consciousness, and this is every single opportunity for growth and for expansion, and you have to step up, and you have to grow, and you have to at the same time, there is a work that my husband loves and adores. It's his work, it's his life, it's his vision, it's his everything. And imagine that's why I asked you the other day, so what time do you wake up, and what time do you start working? And it's the answer is, oh, never, kind of. Well, you gave me the hours, but in reality it means never. So imagine in that space,
Where does the baby fit
imagine
in?
in that space you have such a huge responsibility.
You have been taken
wife.
hostage by your baby. You have been literally taken hostage by your baby. And you have to, and it's almost like a surrendering of your time, which you don't want to give. And there's a lot to be given to the baby. But no, you're absolutely right. I mean, you both kind of came into this consciously and deciding. So you knew, no, you didn't know. There's no way you could have imagined. Yeah, you could not have imagined. You could not have imagined. No. But the interesting thing is that you're absolutely right. Is that let's look at this from a study's point of view. It's interesting you say consciousness, because consciousness does not know time nor space. So when you say consciousness and the melding of consciousness, that's history too. That's past too. So a lot of the things that attribute towards postpartum depression is actually past relationships, childhood, the upbringing. There is the environment. There is the genetic factor as well. There's both. And so when you have come face to face with, as you put it, yourself, this is another mirror image of you. You've got another consciousness looking right at you, right back at you, telling you, "Hey, I'm a little bit of you. I'm looking right back at you." And then everything that comes out unconsciously, the childhood. What kind of childhood you had? What kind of upbringing you had? What kind of parent you're going to be? So without even having done anything at all of this comes. Yeah, there's no interest. I just don't want to fail. I just don't want to do this. And then you could almost immediately see how if you were even to actually look into the neurological kind of traces of what it is to have a depression. So you have the prefrontal lobe up here, and you have the I'm bumping into my mic as I'm imagining it. And you have the limbic system right back here. And when the wiring between those gets a little bit short circuited, because those two together form an image of your self identity, form your self image, right? And so when that gets disrupted, we're like, oh, I don't know if I can do this the way I'm supposed to be doing it, because your self image is, let's say, here, and it gets disrupted, or something along the lines of, you've proved yourself wrong once or twice, or you're afraid to, so it skews the self-image. And so the wiring starts to get offset. And so that becomes into a vicious cycle of wiring that actually doesn't need to be there. It gets disrupted. That's why modalities to help trigger that is like cognitive behavioral therapy. We do a little bit of CBT, similar things in brain education, and as well as things like other forms of therapy, but also, what was it? Okay, I mean, now there's this really cool thing of neurological electrical impulses that actually help disturb the thing, and others take psychedelics, to help disrupt that thing, and then you're out of it. You're out of the severe depression. There's all kinds of ways, but the funny thing is that just that, when you look at it from the form of consciousness, you're bringing back all of that. If you had past relationships where there could have been a baby and that's when you stopped it, or there could have been a marriage and that's when you stopped it, and am I going to be a good husband, and all these self-imposing questions. So it's a lot of it to do with your self-worth, your self-value, and when the things don't match and when your thoughts clash and all that stuff, that's the start of it. That's really the trigger neurologically that leads to that whole dissonance thing. But there's not really much to blame. And you touched on something so sensitive and so beautiful at the same time. They're not in control of their pasts. It's happened. It's done to them. That damage is done. And they have this opportunity here to rectify themselves, not even the baby. And they think that the baby is what they have to focus on. No, it's still themselves. If they can relieve that trauma, that expectation, that responsibility off of themselves, feel no shame about it. Yes, I had a bad childhood. I didn't have the best parents, or I had a rough childhood. They didn't carry me enough. I don't have enough oxytocin in my blood to help build up trust, like you said earlier, with holding your baby. So you're making them feel safe, making them feel trust. I don't have that much trust. Can I even trust myself with this baby? And you can imagine how it's self-sabotaging. They didn't do that to themselves all themselves. A lot of that was environment. A lot of that was genetic. And you're absolutely right. Many parents, even traditionally here, they assume, like, hey, we have a baby. We've got a responsibility here. Let's take care of this guy. Let's take care of this thing. And then they're not thinking that the other person doesn't have the same assumptions. Now it's like an extra chore, an extra burden. And they don't know to keep that little baby the main priority. And so they have to recluse back. And then it's like, well, what about them? They're the ones to support you. I mean, it's almost like a company. You guys now have a company. I have to support my staff to best serve my client, the baby. So I have to make them feel happy because they're the ones who are going to support me. It's almost like an institution. You're forming a family institution. If I can support my partners, if I can support the people working with me, this becomes a whole lot easier. And you touched on it so beautifully because it is the three-way harmony in doing that. I mean, beautiful the way you just put it there. I mean, what about them? Yeah.
Yeah. It has to be a team effort, because your baby really needs a team. And if you are, for some reason, a single mother or a single father, first of all, I really don't know how you do it, but also I know this is definitely not supposed to be that way. So first of all, I'm really sorry to hear that.
It's funny you say that because Manira, one of our trainers, is a single mom to two tigers. She calls them the tigers. They're both teenagers. Actually, one of them is like well into college just in the first year. How, right? We better bring her on set and ask her.
But also, I feel if you are a single mother, if you are really struggling, reach out to your neighbors, ask for help. Do not be ashamed. Do not be ashamed of asking for help, of reaching out even to us, and actually, just asking, just reaching out, brain education has so many tools to help, so many, and not only brain education. There's so much help out there.
There's so much.
To reach out, to have the courage to reach out, and the same goes for men.
And we can't play the
Um,
blame game on the medical institution either. I mean, the health sector really does its job in taking care of health, but it's not entirely holistic, and maybe it should evolve. Maybe it's just slow and it's playing catch up. But like you said to me in a previous conversation, even after birth, they call you back in for a single meeting. It's the same here, by the way. It's just the one meeting, I think a month out from the birth, and they just kind of check if everything is there. But if there's something happening psychologically or physiologically, you have to be the one to actually announce it. But if you're not entirely aware as to what's happening, you have no clue. You could be run with this blind thing on your back.
Also, if you announce it, what is the solution? Antidepressants. That's what's the
Well,
solution
that's the
here.
thing. It's either
This is,
medications or modalities. You're right. So, I mean, doctors
yeah,
will
this
do
is
the
not
best
a
that they can do.
solution.
Right.
This is
Right.
yeah, this is not a solution. The antidepressants are not the solution. You know, it's just not. I'm
I
sorry.
mean,
I was
I mean,
trying to say
I'm gonna
something
play devil's
tolerant.
advocate to my own practice and say that because you know my father, right, back in the day when he was still because he's a special kind of gynecologist that helps you get past infertility. So if you couldn't have a baby, making it even more grateful to the whole process that they actually helped prepare the oven so that you can have the baby. He would deal with medication too. So he has also a specialty in the psychology field too, and I think it's kind of rubbed off on me, obviously, and he would actually deal with patients, but a lot of it was therapy. I mean, he was giving out kindness, he was giving out warmth, he was giving out therapy, he was selling safety, he was selling trust. But the medication definitely took it a certain way, and of course, he had to pull back off of it eventually. But there are certain ways that it's a lifter, it's a booster. It's almost like saying taking Red Bull, but eventually the remnants of the fact, the damage, you still have to heal later on because it's going to catch up with you once you grow out of it, once you whatever. So when you say it's not a solution, it doesn't guarantee complete healing. You still have an emotional component that made you vulnerable enough to fall into that trap. You still have a mental component that made you vulnerable enough to fall into that stuff. And that's the stuff you need to solidify. That's the stuff you need to make resilient. So I still think brain education is nothing to do with something's wrong with you. You need to work it out. And any kind of therapy, any kind of yoga practice, any kind of holistic practice is not something is wrong with you. You need to do that, or I need to feel better. And that was most people's mistakes actually in the pandemic. They waited to feel better because they feel worse. This is something that you can do at any point to thrive, to make your life a whole lot more optimistic, to make it a whole lot more ideal. That's what brain education is for, is to enhance the power you have inside of you and remove these vulnerabilities and find out more, because discovering them is actually quite entertaining. It's quite interesting, isn't it,
Yes,
Anastasia?
yes, 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 yeah. I feel like, but actually what I wanted to say really, if you are a young father or not a young father, if you are a father and you're struggling,
Right.
please reach out to me, reach out to Master Maz, reach
Oh,
out, because this is really important. It is important that you sort it out.
yeah.
It's important that you
I mean,
grow and
mothers
then
too.
take
We spoke about the dads, but because they're underspoken, honestly. But yeah,
and mothers, yes, yes, yes. And I mean, mothers is like, of course, but also dads, because mothers. The thing is, mothers can, as I said, women cannot feel and be supported if men are completely broken. And I mean, that's just what it is. And the other way around.
right.
Women cannot
And
be,
that's the thing. We don't know
men
when we're
cannot be.
hobbly when we're doing the wobble walk, as Cecilia put it. We don't know if this is broken. We can't tell. But if we're definitely changing the way we behave and behavioral appropriateness, and that's a good indicator too. I think that's where we start. Like character, right, is also reflected in our behavior. If we're certainly behaving in a way that we think is odd, different, not necessarily appropriate for the situation at hand, that's probably a good sign that something's happening in here, or either in here, or something had happened in the past that is now, being brought to surface with the stimulus of current circumstances, of current conditions. So that's
Yeah,
probably a good time to kind of say, hey, I've got something, I don't know what it is, but I'm behaving in a ways that's not necessarily appropriate for the situation. That is definitely all this happening here, the prefrontal lobe limbic system kind of thing that's going
yeah.
on for
And
sure.
if you are already feeling, you feel, I'm depressed, I don't know what to do. A really simple way of getting yourself out of this, if you're conscious that this is what's
Right,
happening to you,
right.
and you want to get start bringing yourself out of this situation.
Right.
I kid you not, the best thing
Oh,
is
please.
1 minute exercise.
Oh my God, she pulled it
It's
out. It
true.
came out of the 120. Oh, so I didn't bring context to this. So earlier, Anastasia, some of you may thought that may have been strange. Earlier, Anastasia said, I decided to live 120 years. That's literally the title of the book. I decided to live 120 years by Ilchi Lee, the founder of the Brain Education Program. But the funny thing about that is the keyword is not the 120. Because, you know, I mean, I mean, even from Islamic traditions, we know that people live to be 100 and maybe more. And so that's not the shocker. It's the keyword being I decided, which is being very aware and living life choosingly, consciously with, you know, extracting, milking out life, right? So in that book, Ilchi Lee actually introduced the 1 minute exercise, right? So the 1 minute exercise is basically, in other words, sporadic or momentous, or how can I say it? Opportunistic exercise. So like, oh, I could move for a little bit, timer for 1 minute or roundabouts. It can be 1 minute, it could be 5 minutes. It's not strict. And do anything from push-ups to squats to walking a minute, jogging in place, ab curls, whatever it is you want to do. Just find something and do it. Timer, like literally, oh, opportunistic 1 minute. And he would recommend actually doing it every 1 hour or every 2 hours. But opportunistically means like whenever you recall, 1 minute, and then you go straight to it. So moving that excess thought of energy of like, oh, woe's me, victim mind, things are happening to me, straight into that action energy and doing it. So
And
please.
physically, the most important thing is you're raising your temperature. This is very important for when you have a depression, is to raise your temperature,
Bodily
move
temperature.
your blood,
Yes.
move your blood.
Circulation.
Because the circulation, blood and energy circulation is really important in when you have a depression. So when you have a depression, you have the tendency of becoming really cold hands, cold feet.
Yep.
Your digestion often doesn't work as properly, you know, or
Right.
it's not, or it just is not as good as before.
No, definitely not. Yeah.
There are so many hormones, but also the happiness hormones, serotonin, dopamine, is in your gut.
Right.
There is so much blood that just sits there in the gut when you're not moving.
And luckily for you, we've got the method so that you don't have to just eat right. You can literally just, you know, palpate or stimulate your gut, and that will actually help excrete the serotonin and dopamine that you would need to help boost you out of that depression.
So what you have to do is move that blood, move yourself, move everything, you know. So, and this is, but you know, it takes a certain amount of courage from a person who is flat depressed to a person who's help.
Yeah.
So, you know, but so that's why, you know, reach out, talk, find another depressed dad and do this together, or find someone to talk to, you know. Also, one more thing that I really wanted to say is whether you have a depression, you know, your feelings are totally valid and valuable, you know, and it's common. You're not alone. This is happening. You know, we see you, we understand you.
You're not alone.
You know, we love you. This is all okay.
Yeah.
Because, you know, some of these men are like, am I the worst dad ever?
Yeah.
Like,
feelings of self-worth.
Yeah. No one said I had a depression, but I have a depression. Am I the worst? No, you're not. You're amazing because you are aware enough to say I'm not, you know, and you are courageous enough to say, you know, I'm not feeling amazing. In the world where everyone has to be amazing and everyone is so happy on Instagram.
No.
You know, in the world where everyone has to have this perfect face,
right?
You know, it's so hard to say I'm not feeling it, you know, help. And so this is very important. So please reach out if you're a woman or a man, you know, depressed. This you know, find your community, find someone to talk to. Know that your feelings are completely valid, completely okay. You know, this is okay. And then find a way. How can you make yourself feel better?
Right.
You know, momentarily, sort of. You know, we've already discussed is make yourself hot, sweat, you know?
Warming up.
Bring your temperature up,
Right.
move your body.
Right.
It doesn't have to be every hour, do it
Enough
for
of that.
15
No,
minutes.
but that's the thing. We talked about the whole new modality for like or therapy for like neuroelectrical impulses through the brain, but that's to kind of disrupt what you're already having as a self-image. If you give enough disruptions through physical action, you're disrupting enough of that thinking to help your neuroplasticity of your brain to form new wires, and you're like eventually you
Yeah.
accumulate the process of actually forming enough good connections inside your brain through action, through choice, that you will hopefully develop enough of a habit where you can get strong enough to then reflect internally, mentally, emotionally, and that resilience, that condition, it doesn't solve the depression, but it certainly helps improve your condition to which you could be better equipped to challenge this, to face this, to address this, to acknowledge this. And don't, I mean, Anastasia is being very kind with her words, but please don't just identify with, I'm depressed, I gotta go get help. Just, it's as simple as maybe I'm not behaving the best way I could be. Let me see if I could do something about that. And that's it. You don't need to be categorizing yourself as the mental health case. This is not a mental health show. This is how we can raise our consciousness. This is how we can change our human behavior. This is how we can change our minds, our internal well-beings to help be of benefit to ourselves and to everyone else out there, right? So well done. Well
Even
done.
if you're feeling, even if you're exactly, even if you're not feeling depressed, depression is like the last phase or pre-last phase. There are even more phases that could be last,
Yeah, this shame,
but
this guilt, there's a few others down there. Yeah.
yeah, depression is very serious. But even if you just feel like, "Oof, I'm not the best," it's just not the best. I'm not
Just
feeling
that. That's
100%. I'm
enough.
not feeling
Yeah.
the 100%. You can feel better. You can
Yeah.
feel better. You don't have to repeat your parents' fate. You don't have to repeat your country's
You
fate.
are not
You
your
can
parents,
create.
even though you kind of
There is
are. Yeah.
Yeah, you can create your you had your mom and dad, like I always often think like I had my mom and dad, or I have my mom and dad, and they're like this and that. Amazing, right? How amazing they are, or how at fault they are, or whatever. But my son will be looking at me the
Right.
same way that I'm looking at them right now. Like
It
I
comes back
often
to
think,
you.
huh?
Comes back to you.
Yeah, I often think, why did my parents do this? My son will be thinking, why did my mom do this? Or why did my dad not seek help when he
Yeah.
needed it?
Right.
Why? What was why our environment is so that a lot of men or women don't feel comfortable enough to say that I'm depressed, I need help, or I'm just not feeling 100%, or there's something off, I need help, or how can I make myself better, or how can I make the life of that tiny little being better, what can I do?
Right.
These are all really big questions, and they're because like I mentioned to some people, oh, male depression, postpartum, whoa, and some some people, women automatically assume that it's just something wrong specifically with this husband, or with those dads.
Yeah.
No, my husband is amazing. Is an
Right.
amazing father,
Right.
amazing husband, amazing human being.
Right.
This is karma. This is much bigger than that, and it is uh, it is an expansion. An expansion is uncomfortable, and it can go either way. And we have to create loving, beautiful environment for ourselves to grow